Anthony. How you going?
G'day, Dave. Another fine week in CrossFit world has happened again.
Excited. 2 weeks has gone by.
2 weeks has gone, so got another great guest on tonight. And it's been a big world.
Let me turn down. And we, as you can tell, we still haven't changed our little intro song.
Yeah, we're waiting for Dave's awesome daughter to fix our intro, so it will happen soon. That's just a little bit of pressure on her.
Big shout out to John Williamson, Aussie icon, really.
If he only knew that he was a part of this, he'd probably feel
absolutely. Maybe we could get him on the show one day.
I don't think he's a CrossFitter, Dave. I'm not sure his insulin resistance would be up there, but we'll see.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, awesome. It's been an awesome 2 weeks. Lots has happened, and we're going to deep dive into a bit of that tonight, with our special guest. I'll just show this little thumbnail. Christine Cronau. She's pretty famous.
She is. She is the original Keto Queen.
pretty famous in the nutrition world. Keto Queen, as you said, is her pseudonym, but I think we're going to change that a little bit too. I think we've got to add something to it. Let's bring her on and tell her what we're going to add to her new pseudonym.
Okay, here we go. We're going to welcome her. Welcome,
Come
Christine.
on
Welcome to
board,
the
CAMPodcast. Cronau. Yeah, how are you, Christine?
I'm good. I'm great. How are you?
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
We've been trying to get you on the show for a long time. You've always been busy.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a juggle.
Wednesday nights has been a bit of a juggle for you. Last time we wanted you to come on, you had to go watch a opera or something. Very cultured.
Oh yeah, it was a show in the city.
At the Lyric Theatre.
So after this show, we'll have to ask whether the opera or the cultural show was better than the podcast. All right, and so it's a loaded question.
Absolutely. Well, you're looking great, and we're really excited to talk to you. It's a really interesting topic, nutrition. Everyone's got an opinion on nutrition. And why is that? Because we all eat. We're allowed to have an opinion. We don't all fly spaceships or go to the moon, so most people don't have an opinion on that type of thing. But we all eat, and so everyone's got an opinion. But Keto Queen, I'm going to change your pseudonym to the Keto CrossFit Queen.
Hilarious.
The Keto CrossFit Queen.
Nice.
Because you're a CrossFitter now.
Yes, I have a hard time thinking of myself as a CrossFitter. I still feel like I'm learning so much and I'm still a beginner. But yes, I've been doing it for 5 years now and I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
But not only that, it seems like you've dragged your whole family into the CrossFit world. Even your mother-in-law, who's like 80 years of age, you've got her into CrossFit.
We'll show some video of that's your mother-in-law.
Yes, even my mother-in-law. She's been doing it now for 2 years. And she's just going great guns. She's also been keto for 15 years, so she's got the foundation. But she's been CrossFitting for 2 years now, and she does the life class. So some of the CrossFit gyms have the life class, which is awesome.
And shout out to your box, your CrossFit box, CrossFit
Western Front.
Yeah. We'll send this. Who's the here's my pen. What's the name of the box owner or team?
So it's CrossFit Western Front, Ipswich, and you've got Kate and Alex, who are the owners.
Ippy. Okay, Kate and Alex. All right. And it's a great gym.
It's an awesome gym. It's a fantastic gym. It's got a great community, as many of the CrossFit gyms do. It's been. And you used to train. We used to train together in the beginning, in the early days. Yes.
Can I take credit? Sure. Can I take credit for getting you started in CrossFit?
Absolutely, you can. So I don't know if you remember how that happened.
Don't give him that. It'll be just another thing that'll. So
I don't know if you remember how that happened. Do you?
No, I can't.
So you had a showing of that sugar film with Damon Gamow at the uni.
Yes.
And you had me speak there with Damon, and also I think you had David Gillespie as well.
David Gillespie
and that's the first time I met you through
Troy Stapleton
that
as well.
sugar
Yeah.
film.
Yeah. And so we met at that event, and then I sort of started sending a lot of my patients to you for nutritional advice because it was just taking me too long in my 45-minute consults. That'd blow out to like an hour and a half, and my waiting room would be all very unhappy patients with spinal problems and brain tumors, and I was too busy talking about the carbs that they were all eating. so I offloaded that to you to help me with that, and then obviously we just started talking about what we did for health and fitness, and CrossFit came into the conversation.
Absolutely, yes. You started talking to me about CrossFit, and I think Randall started first, my husband, then I started shortly after he did. Yeah. And I honestly didn't think I'd be able to do it because I do have a damaged lung.
That's right.
I do also have some torn ligaments, so I can't jump.
Yeah.
Can't really run. I can do shuttle runs, but I can't do proper running.
Well, I can remember you first talking to me about that because you were really worried, and you were telling me about the lung. You've had lung surgery. You had like a nasty lung infection or something like that required
it wasn't surgery. It was just I ended up with sepsis many years ago, and of course, when you have sepsis, a lot of your organs shut down, including the lungs. Well, it's different for everyone, but it's generally the lungs. Could be the liver or kidneys. In my case, it was the liver and the lungs. And
so did you have to have a surgery?
So basically what happened was they had to drain my lung. It was full of fluid. And so I've got quite a bit of scar tissue from 2 different punctures I had to do in my lungs.
Yeah. And then the doctor sort of said it's unlikely that you'll ever be athletic or able to tolerate high intensity training or physicality, and you just believed him.
Well, the doctor said to me, don't exercise.
Don't exercise.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't listen to that, but so I was exercising.
Good old modern medicine strikes again. Good old modern medicine.
In fact, I had a checkup recently with a specialist, and they again told me not to exercise.
Is this a specialist in what? Respiratory?
This was a specialist who was looking at my torn ligaments. They were saying don't exercise. Definitely not deadlift, squat, any of that type of thing. But I've been exercising quite a long time with those things, and I've been doing quite well. And in fact, the great thing about it is that with my lung was assessed at about 50% capacity before I started CrossFit, and I tried everything. I tried machines, I tried breathing exercises, I tried all kinds of therapy. And the thing that's improved my lung function the most has been CrossFit. So
wow.
I often say there's 2 things that changed my life: keto, second one, CrossFit.
Okay, let's show this so that your orthopedic surgeon can get really mad at you next time you see him. You said don't deadlift, right? There you go. What was that? 90 kilos?
That's my 91 kilo. That's my one max at the minute.
91 kilos. And this is the family? This is your daughter?
This is my family. This is my daughter, Anna. And my husband, Randall.
Randall, hitting it, going hard at CrossFit Western Front.
Yep.
They're tough movements. They'll V-ups.
Yeah.
V-ups for Anna. V-up for Anna, and you're doing H-ups?
Well, that's supposed to be V-ups, but I can't quite get my legs straight yet.
Yep. Doesn't matter. Randall's doing his sit-ups. Randall's pretty fit. He's always been pretty athletic.
Oh, he's very fit. He used to do... Oh, this is my mother-in-law.
This is your mother-in-law who's started CrossFit 2 years ago, people.
On the weekend.
How old's your mum? Your mother-in-law?
So she's about to turn 80.
That's it. Perfect.
Wow. How cool is that?
That's
not many 80-year-olds abseiling down Kangaroo Point cliffs.
That's it.
Jesus.
Is that Kangaroo Point?
Oh, here we go. And here's 80-year-old.
So she had a goal before she turned 50. Before she turned 80 to do a 50-kilo deadlift.
Well, that's easy.
And here she does it twice.
Oh, she's going again.
That was easy. She could do more.
She's got a lot more in her.
Just last week, she did 5 by 5.
Very good.
How good does that make you feel?
Oh, no, she did 5.
Wow. So
she's obviously got to get a new 1 rep max now.
Oh, easy. Like that was not even hard. I mean, obviously, you just got to build up slowly. But... Are you there?
You probably do there. Like that 50 went
Sorry,
up
Anthony, you
straight.
just broke up. What did you say?
Did I?
Yeah, you just broke up. Anthony's broken up.
I think we lost him for a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Oh, you just got blocked out by Telstra, the supercharged internet.
I got blocked out by your internet for some
bandwidth.
Reason. So
yeah, well, I'm sure she'll.
Let's get.
So what was 50 kilograms, and she's aiming for another.
Well, she hasn't set a new goal, but obviously she can increase her 1 rep max now that she's done 5 of the 50 kilos.
Oh God, yeah.
But she ended up doing that 50 kilo deadlift early, and she turns 80 at the end of the month, so on the 26th. And
she kind of had a goal of doing these things, these little bucket list things, did she? And CrossFit and nutrition has probably been a big contributor to that.
Well, absolutely. And in fact, if she said the other day, she's gone abseiling before when she was 65. But she said there's no way she could have done it again if she wasn't doing CrossFit at this age.
And does she really enjoy going? Like, how many days a week does she go? And
she goes 3, which is the maximum that they have the live classes at the moment. But she goes, every week, 3 days a week, and she loves it. Absolutely loves it.
And how many days a week do you go? Do you and Randall go? I
try to go 5 days a week, and then Randall goes 6 days a week.
That is hardcore. That is absolutely hardcore. Let's show, because this is a CrossFit podcast. Of course, we have to talk a little bit of CrossFit for a while. But let's before we dive into the nutrition stuff, let's do a bit of a screen share here of Christine's performance in the CrossFit Open. So your first Open, Christine, 2024. Did you not want to do it in 2023? Were you just a little bit sort of?
I actually said to Randall, I said I won't ever do the Open because obviously I'm limited in what I can do. And for example, there's always going to be skipping, or there's going to be things I can't do.
Yep.
And because I'm slow, I feel like I'm slow because of my lung. So I just thought there was no point in me even doing it, but I was talked into doing it in 2024.
Yep.
And so I'm just going to keep doing it and just keep trying to improve where I am from year to year.
It's infinitely scalable. And if you can't do a movement, you might not get points for that. But you got to remember that the other thousands of people on the leaderboard are also making those same adjustments to their score. And so relatively, it's still a good measure of your capacity and fitness, right? So look at this, 2024. Let's just look at by Australia, women in Australia, and then in your age division, 50 to 54 division, 310th, which is fabulous. Anyway, for your first Open after doing CrossFit for a couple of years. And then in that one, you must have picked up your training consistency from 24 to 25, did you? Did you get a bit of a boost of motivation or?
I did a couple of things. One thing was I went from 3 days a week to 5 days a week.
Wow.
I probably did that in 2024, actually. I started 5 days a week. But the other thing is just as well that I went from scaled to RX.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you do some RX workouts, and that, of course, throws you up the leaderboard, and 100% improvement, 150 seconds.
100% improvement.
That is so good. That is so good.
That's better than the 1% better every day. That's awesome.
Yes.
So you could.
I'm actually looking forward to next year because I'll be in the 55 category. So, so my RX will be different.
I thought
they might up it if they keep looking at what the women are actually achieving and go, you know what? No, they can't come down yet. It's like a workout you do when you see that the difference, but when the women get the difference in the assault bike, and it's like 2.5 times versus 2 times. I'm like, no, I've seen half the women in the gym and they go just as fast as us. That's not fair. So,
what age division are you in, Anthony? 45 to 49?
I'm in 45 to 49. Yes, Dave.
We're going to, just for comparison, we're going to bring up Anthony's. We're going to bring up Anthony to see what sort of improvement he's had. LEA. There he is. Okay, profile. Talk us through this, Anthony. I'll do a bit of a screen share again. Okay, there's Anthony's profile. Ranked by country. You've not been too bad. Oh, look, you've done quite a few. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
Yep.
607 in Australia. And then not a massive jump.
No, there wasn't really the changes, but I think 2023 was the year where there was so many people that did the Open. So it seemed like I didn't really increase.
You went backwards. You went backwards a bit.
But it was interesting because 2023 was pretty much, I think, the first year I started doing some RX pieces.
Yeah.
Yep. And then
so maybe you would have done better if you'd stayed scaled. Do you think? Or
no. Okay. Like it would have been. I think it was just the amount of people. Like if you look at, I think there's a little dip in yours as well at that time, because I think that was one. It was a really high participation that year, and yeah. So you can see that 2025 has been my best year. So I'm pretty.
So that what I've shown that for, Christine, is just to show you that, like, the order of magnitude, of improvement is so good. It's just such a reflection of your capacity and fitness gains, and it's. I mean, obviously that'll slow down. It'll start to be a little bit of a slower sort of trend line of gains, but it doesn't ever stop being fun, and that's what's one of the really cool things about CrossFit is that those gains in numbers like PBs and times and things like that are also
that's a nice message from Kate. Hey, Kate.
Kate, CrossFit WF Western Front.
So Kate's the owner of CrossFit Western Front.
Oh, Kate, we've been talking about Western Front a lot. Actually, we haven't talked about anything else other than Western Front so far. Thanks for joining the podcast, Kate. Be sure to support the channel and
hit the subscribe button.
Hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of our future shows. We're how many months into it are we now? We're a couple of months.
I think this is us. Yeah, it's a couple of months now. So growing with traction and got a few more. You can always look at the past episodes on YouTube and see the people that we've been able to. We've had some great people so far. So we had Cara last fortnight. So
yeah. So that's superb. But yeah, okay, let's take that down. We'll stop sharing that one.
So just when you're talking about improvements, one of the things I love about CrossFit is that as people are degenerating at this age, we're still getting better every year, which it blows my mind. Even with everything that I know, it still blows my mind that most people are convinced that they have to, as they get older, they slow down, whereas we're speeding up. We're still trying to do better and better each year, and I'm sure we'll reach a point where we won't be able to keep doing that.
We don't know where. We don't know when that is. I don't think it's really clear where that plateau is, where we are getting older. Maybe we're getting a little bit more skillful as we play the sport longer. Before natural senescence and aging starts to make you start the decline, right? But even if you think about the decline in functional capacity, that's still going to be much shallower than if you weren't engaging in regular functional training. It's still going to be much shallower, compared to people who don't do this as part of their lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And this is where Dave, like Christine and I, are going to catch up to you, because you're going to come down faster because you're older and you've been at the top for so long. Whereas Christine and I, we just keep going up. I'm not stopping. We're going up.
Yeah, we're still going up because we haven't been doing it as long, David.
Absolutely.
Well, it's super. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing when new people join the gym, our gym, and they're sort of on this rapid improvement, and I think, oh gosh, that I won't be able to beat that young bloody gun for very much longer, because they just make this rapid improvement, and here we are just sort of slowly improving, but
well, that's what happened when Anna joined the gym. She's just she's already doing muscle ups. I can't do a muscle up. She's shot past us.
That's great. So. She's right into it. Has she managed to get any of her friends into it as well, or not? Like her age.
Not yet, but she's really enjoying it. She loves it.
Awesome. Let me just bring this into that.
Actually, she's been at CrossFit Western Front 1 year now. She just made 1 year.
Oh, okay. Well, this is like one of the central tenets of CrossFit, and one of the things that appealed to me about it when I started CrossFit, and no other sport, like running, tennis, surfing, whatever sport you could think of, just personal training, club sports, footy, we don't have this as one of the central tenets of the game. Nutrition is at the base of the pyramid. Okay, nutrition forms the basis of our performance and our health, and then it's only after that we start to think about at the apex. Like, and now we're looking at it as a sport, and then when you look at it as a sport, it's mechanics, consistency, and intensity. Okay, so everyone who does CrossFit understands the apex of the empirical goals of CrossFit, or the fundamentals of CrossFit. They understand mechanics, consistency, intensity. We all feel that every time we do a workout. But I think one of the big areas that we probably need to work on with not only the general population, but CrossFitters, is this nutrition element, which the inventor of CrossFit, Greg Glassman, understood very well and put at the base of the pyramid. It's the bedrock. It's the bedrock of building the human body. So that's where we're gonna, maybe we sort of divulge a bit now and change track and talk a little bit about nutrition. Because tell us a little bit about your hello, Shanae. You know Shanae, Christine?
Yes, Shanae's an absolute beast. She only had a baby 9 months ago, and she's killing it in the gym. She's even
awesome.
She's even faster than she was before she had a baby.
Wow.
The pregnancy hormones.
All the super hormones.
Well, you're also carrying that extra weight for 9 months, right?
Absolutely.
And then you're training with that extra weight.
Actually, like and subscribe, Shanae. The CAMPodcast, one of the only Australian-based CrossFit podcasts with a focus on affiliates. Okay, affiliates is the king. Affiliates is what we need to support. It's got to be CrossFit's popularity and professionalization is built through the affiliates. So support us as we do our bit to support affiliates. So nutrition, Christine. What's your professional qualifications as nutrition expert?
So I'm a clinical nutritionist, but I also have a master's degree in public health nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a research degree. So that was really good for me to actually understand the studies on nutrition, because there's a lot of misinformation about nutrition out there, as you well know. So it was fantastic to do that research and actually look at exactly what the studies say, rather than just all the stuff that you get told that, you know, we've always done it this way and this is the way we're meant to do it. But where's the evidence? I always want to see the evidence.
And what about that? Distinguish that from, say, the dietitian's course or DAA membership, Dietitians Association of Australia, a qualified dietitian or dietetics. Would you say there's a lot of difference, or do you have dietitians qualification as well or not?
No, just nutrition. So there's different qualifications with nutrition. There's nutritionists, there's naturopaths who are basically nutritionists with extra skills with regards to herbs, etc. And then you have dietitians, which is another degree again. Dietitians are actually under the Medicare system, whereas nutritionists are not under the Medicare system. So they're under ATMS or a group like that.
Okay. Right. And when you were studying your nutrition, so it would have been what, in the early 2000s, or when did you study?
Well, I've done it a few. So my initial nutrition degree was back in 2012, but I changed my diet way before that. I changed my diet back when I was just turning, I just turned 30, so a long time ago. And yes, I studied nutrition back in 2012, and then I did my master's degree in 2017.
So you didn't look overly healthy as a younger Christine there. That's you, isn't it? I don't even.
That's classic inflammation, that is.
Yeah.
Classic, yeah.
So you've lived it. You've lived the transformation. You've lived what you talk about now and what you educate.
So how did it all start, Christine? How did you go from like discovering there must be something I need to do here, and the challenges you had obviously to get to that space? Like, where did it all begin?
Well, it's quite a story of mine, because I was trying to do everything right, eating low fat, lots of whole grains, everything that we're told is correct. I even went low fat vegetarian, thinking that was much healthier as well.
And so you did all that up
I was even vegan for a year. So it was quite strict. And I was doing all the right things as far as what they tell you about combining your legumes and your grains to make sure you're getting complete protein, all that sort of stuff. Yet my health was going downhill, which didn't make much sense to me. If I'm doing all the right things according to the health guidelines, why is my health going downhill? So it actually literally started with a 5-minute conversation that I had with a friend of mine who was a doctor, and she wasn't practicing at the time. She was at home with young children. But she mentioned to me that she'd been doing some research into Weston A. Price. And many of you will know who he is, but for those who don't, he was a dentist back in the 1930s that discovered that the teeth were changing that he was seeing on a regular basis. He noticed that the jaws were narrowing and that the teeth were crowding. And he couldn't understand such a massive change within the number of years he was comparing. So he actually ended up doing research and going to areas that had not been affected by Western diets. And what he found was that it was actually the Western diet that was making this huge difference in the mouths of the children in particular that he was seeing. And it was basically a lack of vitamin K2 that was causing the teeth crowding, for example.
Right.
So basically we had this 5-minute conversation. she mentioned to me something about, she said, Dr. Weston A. Price was recommending that we should be eating more fat, more saturated fat specifically. And I was like, in my head, I was like,
that's crazy.
Everyone knows that
crazy,
we should not be eating more saturated fats, because I was hardline, I was even to the point where I had done this stupid real age test, and it said that I should be reducing my saturated fat even more. So I eliminated butter out of my diet completely, thinking I was doing the right thing. Anyway, so even though I initially rejected it, something about it made sense. So I started doing some research into it. And then I realized when I was doing that, well, my diet that I was eating, which was, something like 4 or 6.
You were following you were following these guidelines,
this
right?
is what I was doing.
This is what you were doing, and you were getting
so I was doing Vita Brits. About 6 Vita Brits with soy milk and a banana for my breakfast.
Rolled oat.
And I realized, well, if you were stuck in the wild,
bread,
if you were stranded on an island, you could
vegetables,
not eat that
fruit.
Absolutely. And
lean,
so when was that? Meat. When was that, Christine?
So that was probably it was probably 2001.
Right. So nutrition isn't a course. It's not a degree. You're not following that career at the moment. So
no,
you're just trying to look after your own health.
Absolutely. So after I had that conversation, I started looking into it through that.
Was the course giving you information? Was the nutrition course that you did, was it following the guidelines and educating you, making you come out to just spew out the guidelines?
Well, if you do a standard nutrition course, yes, it will. Yeah, that's basically what they advocate. The great thing that I found was that when I did my master's degree, I had no issue. And in fact, I went and spoke to the head of the nutrition department before I started, because I did have that concern. I didn't want to waste, a few years of my life having to toe the line with that kind of thing to, do my master's degree. But when I spoke to her, because I said, what I do is a bit controversial, and I, want to make sure that I can do that. And so basically, she said, well, I actually don't think since she was a dietitian, she said, I don't think what you're doing is that controversial, and it just basically needs to be supported by evidence. And I had no issues doing my master's degree, and every chance I had, I did, my assignments on things like the link between type 2 diabetes and sugar and carbs, etc. I did things on insulin resistance, and no, I never had an issue with because it was all research based.
You have to go looking for the empirical science that kind of supports the fact that these guidelines are not very health conscious, or they're not really based in a high amount of scientific validity.
Well, they're actually not based on any science if you look back at it. So I don't know if many of you know the story, but basically the way that our guidelines changed was because, we literally, back in the early 1900s, heart disease wasn't something that was known about. And it certainly wasn't something that was common. But by the 1950s, things had completely changed. And so we started having this epidemic of heart disease, and the scientists were trying to figure out what was going on. And of course, one of the most well-known scientists back then was Ansel Keys, who came up with a theory that it was saturated fat. And it was just a theory. It wasn't proven or anything like that. And in fact, when he presented that theory in Geneva, he was pretty much laughed out of the room by all the other scientists. They were asking, well, where is the evidence? And he used that to then go back and do this, what's called the 7-country study, where it showed a correlation between saturated fat and heart disease. But the thing was that he cherry-picked the data because he had access to, I think it was 21 countries or something like that. And using all the data together, there was no correlation. But what he did was cherry-picked it so that the 7 countries that he picked showed a correlation.
Yep.
But even then, when it looks like there was a correlation, he presented that to the American Heart Foundation. And the American Heart Foundation also rejected it. And yeah, that's right. But what happened after time was that, the board members changed at the American Heart Association. And one of the new board members was Ansel Keys himself. And this is how we ended up them changing their opinion on that. But in 1977, they actually had what was called a McGovern Committee that was run by Senator McGovern. And at that committee, they were going to make a final decision about what to tell the American public in regards to saturated fat and heart disease, and also the dietary guidelines. And there's actually a great recording of this, of a scientist pleading with Senator McGovern saying, please, can we wait until we have evidence? And he said, we as senators don't have the luxury of waiting until every last shred of evidence is in. And that was the point where they changed the American guidelines to this low-fat, high-carb diet. And I think we did it, yes, Australia did it in 1980 after the US.
They changed it to a low-fat, high-carb.
Yes.
Yeah. Fat became vilified, and I think at that time, President Eisenhower had a heart attack. And they say even the president can have a heart attack, but little did they say that he was a chain smoker.
Yes, and in fact, that's one of the biggest risk factors is smoking.
Yeah, of course, because it causes inflammation. And then, so really, what do you think when you see our Australian guidelines, which taxpayers pay for? This is a .gov website. This is a .gov production PDF on the internet. And look what it's telling Australians to eat. Rolled oats, muesli, polenta, this whole 1/3, 33% of the plate is basically what? Glucose.
Glucose, processed food.
Yeah. Packaged food. And then this other 1/3, Christine, we've got all coming from the garden and the vegetable section of the grocery store. That's basically fiber and glucose.
Right? Yes. Well, it depends. I mean,
not a lot of protein. Zero fat.
If you look at it, the green vegetables are fine. But yes, you don't want to have too many carby, starchy vegetables.
Like the potatoes and pumpkin and carrots. And then we come down to this little sliver here. Let's say 15% or whatever. This is more sugar.
Lots of sugar there. Yeah.
More glucose, right? So if we actually look at the plate, 2/3 of it, and let's face it, most Aussies love their potato and corn and pumpkin, right? They're not eating that much bloody green beans and Brussels sprouts. They're eating starchy vegetables, let's face it. So 2/3 of the plate is glucose. So and then when it comes to the meats, they're telling us to have lean meats. Where's the good ribeye, as Cranky Dog? Thanks, Cranky Dog. Cranky Red Dog. Is he another Western Front?
I don't know, Cranky Red Dog.
I love this. A ribeye a day keeps the doctors away. Absolutely, and really a good solid ribeye, Cranky. You don't need much more than that, right? No. I've been surviving on 600 grams of ribeye every single day for the last 2 years. Anyway, so absolutely
talk to us, Christine, about like in terms of, your health was suffering, you were looking for answers. Like as you started to make those changes, like what happened, for your physical experience, your mental, all those sorts of things, like that's going from then to now. But talk us about like those different things.
Basically, in addition to what you can see here, which is chronic inflammation, I had all kinds of health issues. So my gut was a mess. My hormones were a mess. I had insulin resistance. Even though I rarely ate sugar, I just ate a lot of whole grains, all the stuff that they said was healthy. And I felt awful. I literally was so fatigued that, you know, it was a struggle. And I thought, oh, you know, I'm a mum and, you know, I'm busy and all that. No, there was a problem with what I was consuming. Yeah. And what happened when I changed my diet was all of that changed. So I got rid of all the health conditions that I had. And, you know, it takes a while.
And how long did that take?
It takes a while when you're super fatigued to fully recover from that. So I had small gains all the time. And then I'd say within 2 years, I was a completely different person.
Wow. And you were strict for those 2 years in terms of what were you doing? So in that plate, what were you focused on? Like what
I did was I went strict keto to start. And I only intended to do it, I only intended to be super strict. And when I say super strict, I mean I even got rid of things like berries and other things that are often incorporated into a keto diet. And I went super strict because I really wanted to get on top of it. And so I did that for about 12 months. I was only going to do it for a few months to start, but I ended up doing it for 12 months. But it was really good. And in fact, now that I know more about insulin resistance and all of that sort of stuff, if you do have insulin resistance, I find that it is better to go very strict, to reduce your carbs super low, you know, say 20 grams a day, or do something like carnivore.
Yeah. So how can people like who are listening or will listen later, how can they kind of know if they've got an insulin resistance problem?
Well, really what they have to do is the easiest thing is if they come and see somebody like me who understands how to interpret the blood results. A lot of doctors don't even test insulin. And the other problem with something like insulin is that the blood tests that they do these days, and Dr. Ken Sakaris, who's the head of Sonic Pathology, talks about this all the time. There's a real problem because most of the reference ranges that you have on a blood test are the norm for the population. They're not the ideal for optimal health. And this is a real problem because back in the day, the norm was probably a good, you know, reference for health. But it's no longer a good reference for health because most of the population is unhealthy, and insulin is one of the examples that I use for that because, you know, what happens with the labs is they start with an insulin test and the company that makes the test will set the parameters for the reference range, and it will probably start at 10 or less for insulin. And then what that pathology lab will do is normalize it in the population, which means they just normalize it for the people who are being tested at that lab. So that number can vary from lab to lab. And in Australia, some of them are still less than 10, some of them are less than 20, some of them are less than 25. If you've got an insulin of 25
is like, you know, disease. That's a disease state. Yeah.
Exactly. If you've got an insulin of 25, that's insulin resistance. And of course, as a nutritionist, I can't diagnose, but that's the range for insulin resistance. And in fact, if you look at the scientific studies, they always use a range of less than 7 to determine insulin resistance. So why have we got this range of up to 25? People go to the doctor and they have their insulin tested, and, you know, if it's under the 25, they're told, oh, you know, everything's all good.
So is there any physical telltale signs before, like if somebody's kind of worried about it, that they can start to, you know, look at?
I think you would only have physical signs if you had something like type 2 diabetes and you started to have circulation issues or, you know, eye issues or things like that. But I think it's a great idea to test insulin as a regular part of your regular blood panel, because if you get on top of insulin before it becomes an issue, then because insulin starts coming up before blood sugar does, because insulin's coming up to try and keep that blood sugar normalized and in a good range. So it comes up way before the blood sugar does in most people. So if you can find out that your insulin is elevating, then you can get on top of this stuff a lot earlier than once the blood sugar started to come up. It's been going on for a while.
I don't think a lot of people, even in general population, even know what insulin resistance is, and I don't think the GPs talk about it. They talk about their sugars. Every diabetic or pre-diabetic or obese person, the doctors will talk to them about their sugars, and they'll test the blood sugar and say, "Oh, it's okay. You don't have diabetes. You're good." But they, like you said, they don't test the fasting insulin. So the patient and the doctor don't realize that the diet is causing the pancreas to kind of get flogged and work overtime, and then insulin resistance. Maybe this is probably a nice simple one. A lot of people don't realize that insulin resistance probably affects more people on the planet than any other condition. Probably 50 to 75% of people on the planet in Western countries. But look at what it does. All of these, not just obesity, not just people who are overweight, but it causes all of this: heart disease, dyslipidemia, type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovary syndrome, high blood pressure. And then all of that then goes on to the cardiovascular disease, heart attacks and strokes. Mental health as well, Christine. Would you insulin resistance? That's part of mental health.
Absolutely, yep. And
fatigue.
It causes when people have high blood sugar, it causes acne. There's
acne, exactly.
Bad many different things.
So
but
all the
insulin
girls out there with
resistance
bad
is the
skin,
cause
if
of.
they've got
It's
pimples,
basically at the base of metabolic disease.
metabolic syndrome,
Yeah.
and biggest of all that scares people, cancer.
There's definitely a link.
There's definitely a link between insulin resistance and cancer because of its, damage to the mitochondria. And I think there's been, a heap of evidence coming out now that cancer is not just a genetic disease; it's a metabolic disease. It's a disease of the of cellular metabolism at the mitochondrial level. So, this massive rise in cancer, breast cancer, especially in young people, kind of went hand in hand with the increase in obesity and diabetes. So, like, the associations are very, very clear, but yet there's not enough people with your skills, including the medical community, that are talking about this condition of insulin resistance. And just explain to us, Christine, how that insulin resistance is linked to carbohydrates.
So basically what happens is the human body can only take in and use or store a small amount of carbohydrate. So we can store about 500 grams of glycogen in our liver. We can store a little bit in our muscles. That's it. So if we take in more than we can use or store, we have to do something with the rest. Generally, we store it as fat, which is why generally when people are eating too many carbs, they start storing fat and becoming overweight. The other problem is that you have this insulin getting higher and higher and higher, trying to get this glucose out of the bloodstream because the body knows it's not safe for you to have high levels of blood glucose.
Yes.
So then it gets higher, trying to get this glucose out. And it eventually, the cells are like, I can't take anymore.
Yeah.
That's insulin resistance.
And
the
one
other
thing
problem
I
with
remember we remember this from med school and your training. There's only 1 teaspoon of sugar that your blood can hold, right? One teaspoon, a little,
not
5
much.
grams, and yet we'll have potato and vegetables and cereal grains, which are maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 teaspoons of sugar per meal. And your bloodstream can only hold 1 teaspoon.
Yeah.
Versus the 30 teaspoons that you're eating.
Yeah.
Which
So
the pancreas
exactly.
has to get.
That's got to be taken somewhere.
Crazy.
And the other problem as well with insulin resistance is there's a reason they call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. And that is because when you become insulin resistant and your brain runs solely on glucose, then you have trouble getting that glucose into the brain once you have that insulin resistance. And the brain runs best optimally on a mixture of ketones and glucose.
Yeah. Someone was asking me that the other day. Yeah.
If you can go keto, and even if you're not keto, if you take coconut oil, which can help you produce ketones, you then can supply that brain with an alternate fuel source. So people who are at the very beginning stages of dementia or Alzheimer's can often see a huge improvement just by getting a form of fuel to their brain.
Yep. And the brain loves ketones. The brain loves using ketone bodies for fuel. A lot of dietitians, nutritionists might say, oh, no, the brain can only use glucose for energy. It's crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. And actually, sorry, Anthony.
Sorry, I was just thinking, Christine. So, obviously, you've got an enormous amount of knowledge in this space, but you were a patient. You treated yourself. You fixed yourself with your health. What was then the transition to then becoming what you are now? The original keto CrossFit Queen, which you will be known.
Well, actually, the reason I went down that path, because what I used to do was I used to write computer manuals. So completely different. But the reason I went down that path was because I was so disgusted that I had been given all this incorrect information, and I wanted to be able to prevent other people from going down that path, because I got really sick. And I was having children while I was sick and not healthy. And in fact, Anna often teases me and says that she was a veggie baby, because I was vegetarian when I had her, and she was born with the smallest jaw in the world, we used to say. So we had to do a lot of work to extend her jaw, because my diet just didn't have enough vitamin K2. And that's what happens.
That's what happened. So that was the driving force to then.
That was the driving force, because I wanted to tell other people, hey, we're not being told the truth here.
And how was that? How was that journey? Because obviously you're right at the forefront of that timing when that started to happen. It was obviously, Dave and I know a lot about it now, but you were another 10 years before that, in terms of discovering that.
Yes, well, it's interesting how much things have changed between then and now, because back when I first started, saturated fat, or even fat, dietary fat, was literally a dirty word. And you would have I had very strong reactions to it. And there's been a lot of progress. Even though there's still a lot of progress to happen, there's been a lot of progress in that. Generally, when you talk to someone and you say I'm keto, they're like, oh yeah, they've heard of keto. It's, a pretty big thing now. And so it's not really something where people go, oh my goodness, you're going to die of a heart attack, which is what you used to get back in the day.
You still see on popular culture now, like Netflix or watching TV, you'll still hear the comment of, oh, you're having bacon and eggs, that'll block your arteries.
Absolutely.
It's still entrenched it's still deeply entrenched in popular culture that fat is bad for you, right?
But you can sit down with a massive milkshake with chocolate sprinkles and all kinds of things and a candy cane in it or whatever else in it, and no one will say a single word about it.
No.
Actually, my kids got this a lot when they were growing up, because they had those comments. So I remember when my son actually graduated from high school, and he went away on a trip with a bunch of his friends, and the girls on the trip actually went and did the shopping, and he was rummaging around in the fridge trying to find some butter, and he found some at the back. There was some margarine in the fridge. He found some butter at the back, and he was having a piece of toast, because he was on holidays, and so he was because we didn't really have a lot of bread at home, and he was lathering
bread's his little treat. He's having a slice of bread. Oh my God, I'm having a treat.
His treat. Yeah. So he's lathering it with butter.
Yeah.
And someone was like, "Oh my goodness, Zach, you're going to have a heart attack." Like they were really strong about it.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, this is like a schoolies trip where they're drinking Midori and like
That's crazy.
all the other sweet stuff that they had. And
Kalora on Cocoa Pops and all those wonderful
the
things.
butter that gets the comment. And I remember another story as well with my daughter when she was on a camping trip when she was in high school. And she did a similar thing. She had some gluten-free bread as a treat because she was on this camping trip. And she was doing the same thing, lathering it with butter. And someone said, "Oh, my goodness, Anna, you're going to get fat." And she just turned around and said, "Do I look fat?" And, of course, she was actually the tiniest thing you've ever seen when she was at high school. But she still is pretty tiny. But she's muscly now as well as being tiny. But
it's just so disappointing.
It's amazing what people...
It's so unfortunate that the word fat is this, being overweight and visceral fat is the same word as the fat we eat. Like imagine that the fat we eat was called its chemical formula triacylglycerol, right? And being fat was fat, but we never used fat as in fatty meat or fatty bacon or fatty flesh. It was triacylglycerol. Like it's almost like because they called it the same bloody thing, people think fat's going to make you fat.
Absolutely.
And it's the exact opposite. Fat kind of actually makes you skinny. Eating more fat makes you skinny, people.
Yeah, well, this is the way that I always describe that. So if you look at it, fat has twice, because people are often focused on calories. So fat has twice the calories of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
But different calories act differently in the body. Sugar and carbs will actually prompt the body to store fat, whereas fat and protein won't do that. Absolutely. So, yes, fat has more calories, but we've kind of gone down the wrong road when we're focusing on calories and not focusing on the types of foods that you're actually putting in your body.
Because that's the big danger where they talk about the calorie counting. That became very popular in losing weight, is everyone was told to count their calories. And then all of a sudden there was this mathematical game of how many calories can I eat and how many calories am I burning. We call them the calories in, calories out, or the psychopaths, the kikos, the psychopaths who carry constantly balancing up their calories and looking at how many calories on the back of a packet to determine if it's okay for them to eat. But they're completely forgetting about the endocrine or the hormonal influence of what those calories do to the physiology.
Absolutely.
Which is
but not only that, but calories are a measure of heat. So how did it suddenly become something that we use to describe the value of our food? It's
the other thing that really frustrates me is this is something that's really screwed up women's health in particular, because most women have grown up with this idea that they have to restrict, that they have to go hungry, that they have to eat less than they need. And if you think about, particularly with exercise, what they're told is to move more, eat less. Well, if you're exercising, you will be able to confirm this, you need to eat more. It's like taking a car, putting half a tank's worth of petrol in it and expecting it to go a full tank's worth of distance. And here are these women, they're cranky, they are depressed. They're all the things that happen when you go on a low-fat diet because you're not getting enough fat for your hormones. You especially need fat for your hormones. Going on a low-fat diet is a terrible idea. They often become drawn in the face when they go on a low-fat diet. And in fact, they've got this thing called Ozempic face now, because all these people who are taking Ozempic, which basically just makes you feel so sick that you can't eat. And so it's basically a quick, easy, well, I wouldn't call it easy, but a quick way of reducing your calories. And that's why people lose weight. But it's a terrible way to lose weight, to restrict your calories, because, and especially for women, because of their hormones. And of course, once people have been on this train most of their lives, it becomes harder and harder and harder to lose weight. Number one, because they're becoming more and more insulin resistant. Number two, because they're destroying their thyroid. So what happens is, if you restrict your calories, the body says, whoa, we're in famine. And the body's prepared for famine. It will slow the thyroid. It will slow the metabolism. And this is something that I call starvation stress. And it affects a lot of people. And in fact, many women who start keto don't lose weight right away. And it's generally because of this state of starvation stress. And it's often something that has to be repaired so that they can then lose weight. But what happens is the body thinks it's in famine, and it slows that metabolism, slows the thyroid, and then it becomes harder and harder and harder to lose weight, because you're basically doing it with a slow metabolism.
So
would you ever suggest would you ever suggest that they talk to their doctor about, at the beginning of this process, if they're really sick, to sort of have a bit of thyroxine to combat that, like a little bit of...
Well, the better way to do it, I mean, some patients who come and see me are already on thyroxine, but in my opinion, the better way to do it is actually give the body what it needs so it can make its own thyroxine.
So just builds the thyroid.
Generally what people need that they've been missing is things like your zinc, selenium, iodine, and your B vitamins. Those things really help get the thyroid going again and producing enough. And I can't tell you how many patients I've had that I've put them on those nutrients, and it does take time, but the thyroid comes back into optimal range. And I've also got to say, with the thyroid, if you've gone to your doctor and your doctor says, yeah, your thyroid's fine, when they come to me, it's generally not fine, because like I said before, most of these parameters are the normal range. And most women now, because of this idea of low-fat dieting that we've all been raised on, most women now have some form of underactive thyroid. So you're comparing yourself with the norm.
Yes.
So many women have underactive thyroid. One of the big signs of underactive thyroid is hair loss and fatigue, and just feeling really ordinary.
Yeah.
And that would be most women. Which is really sad.
Unfortunately, yes.
Nothing to do with their husbands. Nothing to do with their husbands. It's got
I'm not saying that might not be a factor.
Cranky Red Dog. I think. Have you heard of the World Fitness Project, Christine? The World Fitness Project?
No.
I think there's a lot of there must be a lot of insulin-resistant athletes out there, because they all squat above parallel.
No, that's directed at me, Dave. That's directed directly at me. So,
thanks, Crank. Thanks, Red Dog. Thanks for that comment.
Thank you, Red Dog.
I think it's a very strong association.
No, I don't. I don't think there's an association.
There isn't actually a recognized biochemical pathway to which fatty acids can cause metabolic harm. We don't.
That's right.
I remember someone put out a scientific challenge to the world, and there was a prize money of like $50,000 or something, to all biochemists and nutritionists and physiologists and dietitians, if they could put forward a biochemical physiological pathway that showed or demonstrated how fatty acids could create metabolic inflammation and harm or injury. And the prize has still never been claimed. The $50,000 bursary is still sitting out there. I think it's through the Low Carb Down Under organization or something like that, or the Low Carb group, which is it's global now. So if you disagree with us, show us the biochemical pathway and claim your $50,000.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, think about the words essential fatty acids. We need fatty acids. They're so important. And I can't stress enough as well for women and their hormones. Most women, once they get to menopausal age, in fact, they've got no hormones left. So when we go into fertility when we're young, going out of fertility shouldn't be any more traumatic, really. But it is, because most women have completely ruined their hormones, and they've burnt out their adrenals, which of course take over the production of hormones once the ovaries shut down. So you have women who are operating on very little hormones, and it just creates absolute havoc. And, you know, you can hear a lot of menopausal women talk about the fact that they just feel like death warmed up.
Well, menopause is a reduction in estrogen, and estrogen directly reduces insulin sensitivity. So if you're a carb loader, now you've got two things causing insulin resistance. You know, the carbs as well as the lack of estrogen. You know, so it's even harder.
So Christine, how did you find the transition, like for you personally, because obviously you were eating 6 Vitabrits for breakfast and banana and all that sort of stuff, and as you transitioned away, you know, for those 2 years, like how hard did you find it to kind of maintain that keto lifestyle?
Well, like, it's interesting because when I first did it, because I'd been vegetarian for 5 years. And so the thought of going back to meat, actually, I found quite upsetting. And so I had initially an issue, you know, felt strange to me. But once I ate it, I immediately felt better. So, you know, my body was telling me, and actually I remember this story that Gary Martin told once at one of my seminars. So he runs the retreat in Kin, Living Valley Retreat. Anyway, he told this amazing story because he was a long time vegetarian, and he used to run his retreat as vegetarian years ago as well. And he was actually hiking through Italy, and they were absolutely, completely wrecked, you know, once they'd been doing this hike, and they had arranged a place to stay in the mountains somewhere, and the host of this place spoke no English, and she'd literally gone into the backyard and killed a chicken for their dinner. And these are long-time vegetarians, and he had been having some discussions with somebody about how we'd kind of gone down the wrong path with the vegetarianism, etc. So he had it in the back of his mind. But he looked at his wife and he said, I don't know about you, but I'm going to eat this. And he said he instantly just felt better eating that chicken.
Wow.
Came alive. That's a pretty powerful statement. So you didn't find the cravings were bad, like because of all the carbs that you had? You didn't find that?
No, I personally didn't. I've never been a sweet tooth, so it's probably easier for me. The people who struggle with that would be people who are emotional eaters, or sugar is quite addictive as well. So if you've been addicted to sugar, some people find that it's hard to transition, but I personally never found an issue. I didn't have cravings, and I found it quite easy, and I found the preparation of the food much easier than I did on my vegetarian diet, because when I was cooking lentils, for example, I had to do all kinds of stuff to make the lentils tasty. Edible. Whereas I can just fry eggs now in butter and
done.
That's it, you know, and it's very tasty. Or I can fry up a steak and it takes, you know, a few minutes. So, and then you've got all your flavor there. So I found it a lot easier than my previous vegetarian diet.
Yeah. The preparation for, you know, flesh-based eating is so basic, isn't it? There's no cleanup. Last night, my kids, my son and his girlfriend were at home, and they were cooking their vegetables and all. The kitchen was just like a bomb had gone off with all the food and prep. And I walk in with these 2 trays of ribeye. It took me 8 minutes to cook, and like we ate it in 8 minutes. No, we let it rest for 8 minutes, and we ate it in 8 minutes, and we were done. And they had all this food and prep on the table, and knives and different sort of chopping boards. And it took them 2 hours to clean up. It's like
absolutely.
So simple. Yeah. And Christine, a newborn baby, I believe a newborn baby on the breast milk is in ketosis.
Absolutely. We are born in ketosis, and we're born natural fat burners. So one of my goals with my patients and people who do my program is that I want them to become what I call a permanent fat burner, which is what we're designed to be. We're meant to burn fat for energy. And if we're not doing that, then our metabolism isn't working the way it was designed to work. So ideally, we all want to be burning fat for energy, and we only stop doing that when we just put too much sugar in. For example, if we, when we're young and we're burning fat for energy, if we just have the odd carby thing or sugary thing, we then go back to burning fat for energy. The problem is when we just keep putting it in. And because the body wants to burn that sugar off first and as a priority, and then go back to its normal state. But unfortunately, we then become permanent sugar burners because we've just got so much carb all the time that we're constantly just burning those carbs.
Yep. So this raises a thing that I was talking to Anthony about earlier. He's just started going 1 meal a day, and he was saying that he's getting hungry around, afternoon, which kind of is a reflection that his metabolism is not yet efficiently burning fat, whereas I've been doing low carb and keto and carnivore for the better part of 10 years. And like, I can go all day, no breakfast, no lunch, no snacks. I don't even feel hungry. And then I'll start my training at nighttime, and it won't really be until I'm driving home thinking about my steak, the psychological thought of my sizzling steak, that actually makes me start to feel hungry, which is another sign for people who are trying to go into ketosis or nutritional ketosis. You shouldn't feel hungry through the day if you are in ketosis, because you've got so much energy that you're just tapping into all the time. Is that right, Christine?
Well, basically, you'll just generally feel less hungry anyway, just because that type of food fills you up, It's like if you took out a packet of Tim Tams from the fridge, you could eat the whole packet, right? And then still be looking in the fridge afterwards to see what else there is. But if you ate a pork chop with all the fat and the crackling on it, if you had plans for dessert, you'd probably change your mind, because there's only so much fat you can
You're done. You're
hypothalamus. Because you basically prompt your body to produce CCK, which is our satiety hormone. And when we don't eat fat, we don't produce that. And that's a real big issue with people who eat carbs. That's why they tell them that they've got to eat every couple of hours, because those carbs are just burning off really, really quickly, whereas fat itself is long sustaining energy. I will say, however, with a lot of my patients, particularly if they're doing CrossFit, when they do the fasting, it's really important to make sure they're getting enough protein, because if we're not getting enough protein, we won't have enough energy. So people who are fasting, it's really important that they then, because it's not just about the fat, it's not just about burning fat. Sometimes people forget that we're actually trying to get nutrition as well. We're not just burning fat. We need nutrition, and we get a lot of nutrition from our dietary fat, and dietary protein. So it is really important to make sure, and it's probably worth having a blood test as well, just to make sure our protein levels are okay if we've been doing intermittent fasting, to make sure you're getting enough protein in the day, particularly if you're doing something strenuous such as CrossFit.
I always find, Christine, that when I got the last, because when I've got strict in the last week, like what I find is that I'm coming to the gym and I'm going, I don't want to train. I don't feel like I have energy. I'm really hungry. And then I do the warm up, and then something kind of happens, and then all of a sudden I'm good to go. I'm not tired. I'm not feeling that I need anything, and I can get through the workout really well. and then afterwards, like, I'm fine for about half an hour to an hour. And sometimes I think, well, I don't even really need to eat, but I obviously go home and have a steak or eggs and all that sort of thing. But it's interesting because I don't know if there's that emotional side, and it gets to between 12 and 3, and I'm just going, I'm really hungry.
Right.
I need to eat. And I'm trying to talk myself out of it and have some bone broth or just something to kind of satisfy me, it's been getting easier. But what I've found, like, just personally is, but as soon as I get to the workout, I'm fine. I'm all good. I'm looking forward to do the workout because I know that I'm going to get, the body's going to know that I'm going to do workout, and it's going to flood my system with the glucose and insulin, and I'll be good. I'll be fine. So I don't know if that's, like, if you can talk a little bit about, like, what's happening there.
Well, maybe, David, you could talk about what happens with exercise and that feeling.
Well, that's pretty expected, Anthony, because, like, when you start warming up and start preparing for a high intensity, effort, you're switching on your fight flight hormones, okay, and your fight flight hormones, adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, all those hormones that are getting you ready for the session, kind of switch off this desire to eat. It's not what you don't, when you're going to be attacked by a lion, you don't think, I got to have a meal. You're thinking, I need to get the hell out of here. So that's kind of why the training does. But as you keep up developing that metabolic efficiency, you will not feel hungry through the day. And this is the thing that people just can't get their head around, is that it takes time to develop that elite metabolism, just like it takes time to develop a good golf swing, a good Olympic snatch, a good clean and jerk. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes practice, and your metabolism is no different. And when you can have one meal a day of a nice juicy steak, and that's going to hit the cholecystokinin hormones and hit the hypothalamus and create satiety, you're not going to feel hungry till the next day, or till the 24 hours. We only really need to eat one.
Yeah.
We only need to eat once a day. But cholecystokinin here, I just brought this up. That's also, Christine, why people who are carb loaders or not eating much fat, they're the ones who get the gallstones. They get gallstones.
Yes, there's a few different reasons as well why there's issues with the gallstones. But the biggest thing for me is vitamin K2, because what vitamin K2 does is it helps take calcium and put it into your bones. And that includes when it's somewhere that it shouldn't be. And if you have a buildup of calcium, I mean, it's probably another show, but if you have a buildup of calcium, free calcium in the body, then that vitamin K2 can really help. And of course, our diets are generally deficient in vitamin K2 these days, because you get vitamin K2 from your fatty cheeses, such as Camembert and Brie, cheese like Gouda, grass-fed butter. It's really only in animal foods, unless you're eating a whole bunch of Japanese, what is it? Can't even remember the name of it now. It's like that soybean.
Tofu.
Not tofu. It's the fermented one. Anyway, you'd have to eat tons of that to get vitamin K2, or get it from animal foods. And of course, people aren't eating tons of that, so they're literally not getting vitamin K2 because they've been sworn off of animal foods. I do have to say, however, that I do eat 3 meals a day.
Yeah. Do you because I mean, you've written 2 or 3 cookbooks, but like, and you have to test out all your recipes. But, do you feel hungry? Do you feel hungry at lunch?
I get hungry. Yeah, I do enough that I feel hungry. Absolutely. Okay. I mean, I know what you're saying, that when you change your metabolism, etc., and you start burning fat from your body. But I've been in a fat burning state for over 20 years now, and I still eat 3 meals a day. I still get hungry. So, but I am burning body fat as well. But what you want to do is get into that fat burning state, and it can take about 4 weeks to get into a fat burning state. And the key there is also being, quite strict keto And if there's insulin resistance, you have to go even stricter than a normal person would, because basically when we're insulin resistant, we react completely differently to carbs than normal people do. So I found this great study one time that showed it really well, because they tested regular people, compared them to people with insulin resistance. And what happened was, when the regular person ate sugar, they would have this, their glycemic response would kind of come up and then go straight down again. With the person with insulin resistant, would come up and it would stay up for a very long time.
Yeah.
Similar with the insulin response. Yeah. But the interesting thing was, when they had these people with insulin resistance go on complex carbohydrates, which of course we're told are really healthy, the normal person would still have a very small uptick in glycemic response and then down again. Same thing with insulin. But the person with insulin resistance, they had it. It was like they'd eaten sugar.
Exactly.
And that was from complex carbohydrates. So this is why, if you've got insulin resistance, it's really important to understand that. And then you have to go even stricter again, because you literally become intolerant to carbohydrates.
So this is what
you're like allergic to them.
This is what Christine's talking about here. The scientist that proved all this was Professor Kraft back in the day, and he kind of showed, once you develop insulin resistance, a piece of a sandwich or a slice of toast, compared to someone who's insulin sensitive, is almost like a Mars bar versus a slice of toast. They are responding metabolically as if they've just had a huge bowl of dessert, even though they've just eaten a slice of toast. And so they cannot compare what they do metabolically to, maybe, because a lot of my patients, husband and wife come in, and one of them will be morbidly obese with insulin resistance, and their husband will be, or the other partner will be skinny, and they say, but we both eat the same thing. But you're not comparing the same. It's completely out of context. One person is insulin sensitive and one person is insulin resistant. So even though they're both having porridge in the morning, the person who's unhealthy, it's like they're having 5 Mars bars in the morning. And they don't get that, because they're both eating the same thing. They think that why can't I have my porridge? Why do I have to have scrambled eggs? But yeah, that's
this is actually a really interesting point as well, because when people go low carb or keto, and I don't think a lot of people who are teaching in this space understand this, so it becomes very frustrating for people. But I find around 50% of people, women in particular, it affects women more, who start low carb or keto, they don't lose weight. And they're like, why? And their husband over here is like dropping like crazy. And they're like, what the heck? So there's 2 main reasons that this happens. And the one I mentioned before was the thyroid, from starvation stress from years of dieting. So that's why it affects women more. The second one is insulin resistance, for that reason I was talking about before, because you have a completely different glycemic and insulin response from eating even good carbs that are acceptable on a keto diet, such as berries.
The fibrous veggies and stuff, yeah.
So a lot of people say to me, when people start my program, for example, or they start working with me as a patient, they want to know why I want to go stricter. And that's the reason why, if people
you make them go carnivore, do you? You make those ones go full carnivore?
Well, some of them, it depends. So if people are open to doing carnivore, and particularly if they've got a gut that's quite damaged, then carnivore is fantastic.
Yeah, because they'll have leaky gut syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, all of that stuff, because one of the easiest, and it's contrary to what you'll hear out there, right? People say, oh, meat is the hardest thing to digest. No, it's actually the easiest thing to digest in the gut, meat and eggs.
Yep.
And you're going to have, if you have any problems with bloating, if you have problems with any other gut issues, carnivore's fantastic for just taking away the irritation that's in the bowel. And a lot of people also think, oh, we need to have fiber, right? We've been told we've got to have tons and tons of fiber. Well, actually, the way that fiber makes us regular is because it's irritating to the bowel. It tears holes in the lining of the bowel. It then releases a mucus, and that's what helps everything pass through. Does that sound healthy? And the scientists even say, oh, that must be why we have such a high turnover of cells in the bowel. Well, if you look at
it's babies, an overworked muscle.
Fiber to eliminate. And they're basically having liquid meat.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an overworked muscle.
Fiber argument. That's another generation to get rid of fiber. It's like we've still got to tell people cholesterol, fat. We've got to tell people cholesterol, and then the third challenge is fiber. We'll be like 100 before we get rid of that. as a health crusader.
We need salt. We also need salt.
Oh yeah. Christine, do you get people to use those little ketone measurement sticks?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really quite good for people, particularly if they start my program or something like that, to measure their ketones, because it can be very motivating, for one, because once you get ketones of 0.5, that means you're starting to burn fat. And then, of course, as you get stronger and stronger ketones, between 1 and 2, that you're in a good fat burning state. It's also really helpful for people to see what happens if they go off track when they're trying to get into ketosis, because what happens is they'll be going along, say they've done the diet for a couple of weeks, they eat something that's very carby, and boom, they're out of ketosis like that, and they've got to start again. Whereas if someone like me, who's a permanent fat burner, that's what I call it, I could have a packet of potato chips tomorrow, and the next day I'd be still in ketosis. My ketones would lessen, but I wouldn't actually come out of that ketogenic state. Of course, if I went on a carb bender for
a month
or a week or something, I'd be out of ketosis again. But my point is that when you're first going into that ketogenic state, it's really important to stay strict if you want to achieve that strong fat burning state. And it takes probably 6 months to become what I call a fat burner, where you're not so easily rocked out of that state.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I ask you, because it is getting late, this is one of our longest podcasts, but it's so interesting. So we're going to have a lot of high-level athletes watch this video. So these guys, they're super athletic, like incredible machines, incredible functional capacity. We often see their videos on Instagram, and they're, you can't argue with them. They're amazing athletes. They're going to the CrossFit Games and standing on the podium and stuff like that, but eating dreadfully, as far as what we would define as dreadful, like heaps of carbohydrates, heaps of sugar, heaps of fructose, and just constantly eating throughout the day, because they're supercharged athletes that they say, I need all these calories, and I need to put on, I need these calories, which are mostly glucose and carb driven. They'll have some meat as well. They know the protein, and they have their creatine supplements and all that stuff. What are they doing to their bodies in the short term and long term?
Well, the biggest thing that I see, and I see it in CrossFit itself, because you see all these people who are absolutely amazing, but they get injuries. They keep getting injuries because they've got too much inflammation. So right at the beginning, you were talking about how nutrition is the foundation. And I think you've got to get your nutrition right. If you're going to be one of these people who keeps being a CrossFit athlete into your later years, you've got to get that foundation right so that you don't start getting injuries, you don't have that inflammation. And that way, because we shouldn't be degenerating, but if we're on the wrong diet, that's exactly what happens. We do start to degenerate. We'll start getting arthritis. We'll start getting all kinds of other health conditions. So, and that will prevent us from doing the things that we actually want to do. So it's really important that we have a good foundation in nutrition. And the other thing is, in one of my books, The Fat Revolution, I actually interviewed Clint Robinson. I don't know if you know him, but he's a five-time Olympian kayaking.
Yeah.
And his story is fascinating, actually, because he won his first Olympics quite young. And of course, he was then sponsored by all these people, and he had the sports dietitians giving him advice on what he should be eating. And of course, he went to start eating because I'm pretty sure he was a country boy, grew up on steak and eggs, etc. And of course, his diet was radically changed. And so his performance just went downhill. And long story short, he ended up finding out about low carb, high fat, completely changed his diet. His performance came back and he ended up being a 5-time Olympian. And when I did speak to him, he was in his 40s and he was still competing at world championship level. And he talked about how when the other athletes on his team were carb loading, he was basically eating 2 steaks. And he was fat loading. And the thing that I remember him saying is that he didn't need any of the gels or any of the other things to keep him going. And of course, he was an endurance athlete as well. But he had far more energy and long sustaining energy, not just the short acting, which is why they have to keep taking the gels. And it's also why you see those people, what's the word for it, when they hit the wall at the end of a race and they literally can't keep moving.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's because of the glucose. So if you use fat, say you're going to do a big event and you use fat, it's much more long sustaining energy. The important thing is when I'm working with athletes, it's important that when you're going to transition from a normal diet to a keto diet, to not do it when you have any events, because your performance will suffer while you do
it takes time.
It takes about 4 weeks to become fat.
I mean, I think if you had an elite level athlete, you'd be sort of even longer, even longer, because they need their metabolism performing at an elite level. So that's going to take even longer. But my advice to young CrossFitters now who are just emerging and they're going to be our superstars, in 5 years' time or whatever, they've got to start that now. This is what I say to our members, the couple who have really showing a lot of promise to competing at the CrossFit Games, is that your performance enhancing drug is your diet.
Absolutely.
PED. That's what I say. PEDs, performance enhancing diet. Because that's going to make the difference. They all train and they all lift barbells and throw dumbbells around and hang from ropes and whatnot, just like each other. There's no separation there. There's no separation. 6 hours in the gym, but the thing that's going to define you and separate you is your diet. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they got to keep carb loading if they start carb loading. You have to. It's like a drug. You need more of it to keep.
You do, and it runs out really quickly.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think there's a nutritionist or a dietitian called a sports dietitian. She advocates it. She advocates it to her to the athletes that subscribe to her.
Well, it's standard. It's standard practice.
And it's totally it flies in the face of what Greg Glassman kind of knew empirically said 20 years ago. Fitness in 100 words. The diet: eat meat and vegetables and nuts and seeds, little bit of fruit, little starch, no sugar. It's just it's such a central tenet. Yet the people who are the most elite in the sport don't follow it. They think that's for everyone else because they're not elite, right? You're not elite, so you don't need. I have to be a bit different to you, but that's also an oxymoron too, because we do this sport to develop health. So how could you throw something into the mix that makes you extremely unhealthy if you consider yourself to be elite? It's completely topsy-turvy. But what do you think they're doing long term? So with short term, we know that are they setting themselves up for diabetes and dementia and atherosclerosis and cancer later?
Well, this is the problem, because insulin resistance is the base of metabolic disease. That's the case for everyone who's eating that way. If you're eating too much sugar and carbohydrate, that you're eating more than you can use or store, you're going to potentially not only gain extra weight, which is going to be a problem, but also it is the basis for metabolic disease. So it's absolutely essential especially if we don't want to degenerate as we get older. And that was one of the books that Dr. Weston A. Price, that I mentioned at the beginning, wrote, was Physical Degeneration. And you see it everywhere. It's become the norm that you think as you get older that you have to degenerate. It's just part of aging, but it's not. And in fact, actually, I remember this really funny story. One time when I was on a current affair, this was years ago, somebody sent me a story, and he said he was a dairy farmer. And he said back in the 60s, when all this negative press was coming out about how we've got to get rid of meat and eggs and all that sort of stuff and fat, the dairy farmers all got together to discuss what are we going to do about this. And he said this old geezer, that was his word, this old geezer stood up in the room and he said, I've been stuffing as much fat into my guts as I could my entire life, and I'll outlive most of you young buggers in this room. And he said he did. He rolled his tractor down a slope when he was 99.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
But my point is, he was still working the land.
Yeah.
He was still active. I don't know.
20 years less than his age would suggest he should be doing, or more.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We should really literally drop dead healthy. We should not be degenerating. And if we want to live that way, if we want to live healthy for the rest of our lives and live a long, healthy life, not just a long life, then we have to get to that foundation. We have to prevent insulin resistance and all the things that come with it. For example, when we're eating the wrong way, we have the inflammation. We start to get connective tissue breakdown because our metabolism is not the way it should be. We get the connective tissue breakdown, which then, of course, causes injuries. As soon as somebody tells me that they're getting injuries in the gym, then I look at connective tissue breakdown and I give them a protocol to help with that and to get them back onto track. So it's basically that cycle. You want to be on a healthy metabolism. If you're burning fat for energy, your cells are flooded with oxygen. If you are not, if you're on a sugar and carb-based diet, you don't have that oxygen flooding your cells. And so then you don't have as much energy. Your metabolism doesn't work as well as it should. So, I mean, we could talk all night about this, about how far-reaching it is. But the point is, you need that foundation, and you really need to eat the way that we were designed to eat if you want to live strong and continue living healthy into your later years. And even while you're young, there's a lot of young people these days who are chronically unwell or who can't do the things that we're doing in the gym. So it's essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's probably going to be heaps more questions out there. Like, I've still got other questions. But when people watch this video, stick your comments in the comment section, and we'll check it from time to time. Maybe Christine, you'll check it from time to time and answer people's comments as they come through, because there's so many. The more you learn, the more you sort of inquire, and there's more questions created by learning more.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic. But we'll just give a little bit of it. Did you say you had a new book out, Christine? Was there a new book?
Well, the Easy Keto cookbook is my latest book.
That's a new one, Easy Keto. You can buy that on Amazon. Well,
probably the easiest place is on my website, ChristineCronau.com.
Buy it straight from Christine. Don't give Jeff Bezos any commission.
That's right.
Just go straight to. Is this the one that I wrote the foreword on? Or no, that's written by Dr. Esther Malhotra.
Yes, I think you are in that one. Yes.
Did I write the foreword on here? You give me one of these.
I think you wrote a small paragraph in that one.
Oh,
and
cool.
Professor Tim Noakes and Dr. Esther Malhotra, the cardiologist, wrote the forwards for that.
Yes.
I have 2 forwards in that book.
Absolutely.
One Professor Tim Noakes and one cardiologist, Dr. Esther Malhotra.
Are there desserts in that book, Christine? Are there good desserts in that? Are there good desserts in that book?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And so just a note about this book as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you do my 12-week program, we address insulin resistance because it is a problem for a majority of people. And this book also is what I call strict keto. So what I was talking about before, you have to go a bit stricter to deal with insulin resistance. So this book is strict keto. So it's very, very low carb.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and can you sign a book? Can you sign a book and send it to Cranky Red Dog?
Yeah, I can sign a book. Absolutely.
No extra charge, or that's extra charge?
No extra charge.
No extra charge.
Just let me know beforehand when you've bought it, and I'll.
Cranky Red Dog, send your contact details with a liter of Baskin Robbins every night of peak performance. Asking. Baskin Robbins is way too expensive. But also Netflix, we are going to be the first CrossFit box that's affiliated with the new Greg Glassman Netflix. Okay, because Greg Glassman doesn't have anything to do with CrossFit anymore, but he's trying to still educate affiliates because he's just a passionate guy. BS. Broken Science Initiative. Okay, do you follow much about Greg Glassman's work now, Christine?
No, I haven't seen any of it.
Oh, you've got to follow Metfix on Instagram. So this is since Greg Glassman got thrown out of CrossFit and forced to sell because he got cancel culture because he said something about COVID-19 or something like that, and he linked the two with the Floyd criminal getting choked out, and he combined the two and made Floyd 19 comment on Instagram, on Twitter. So he got cancelled, but he's now still in the space talking about metabolism and Coca-Cola and all that kind of stuff. So there's another little bit of merch. So we're going to become the first Metfix affiliate in Australia, hopefully, because we wholeheartedly support the nutrition basis of health and fitness.
That is.
Yeah, it would be great actually if more CrossFit gyms followed because when I read the level 1 CrossFit manual, the nutrition is laid out there, and so it would be great if more people did the low carb, high fat that they recommend. In the 100%. CrossFit manual. And of course, even with the nuts and seeds, etc., it just depends as well if you're insulin resistant.
Yep. Maybe one day we'll have another seminar for the community as well. When we build up a little bit more subscribership to the Camp YouTube channel, we'll be able to tap into specifically more CrossFit enthusiasts, and we'll do one more of those Pillars of Health seminar. Christine, what do you reckon?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. I think we have to finish with the questions, Dave.
Oh yeah. Okay, better make it super quick. It's our longest podcast ever.
I know. So it's so many.
Cranky Red Dog. Has he got to ask any more questions too? Cranky Red Dog.
I don't know.
Okay, maybe Cranky Red Dog can play the game as well. Okay, it's a game, Christine. You're in charge. You're the captain. We've got to guess what you're going to guess. So don't tell us until we've made our guesses.
Don't tell us. So I'll give you each question, and then Dave and I will say what we think you're going to say, and then you have to say what you would say.
Okay.
So we'll give you so the first question is: would you choose heavy deadlifts or burpees?
Okay, don't tell us.
Don't tell us. Dave, what do you think?
I'm going to go. First off, I'm going to go all relative, of course. I think deadlifts over burpees.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going deadlifts as well. Just wait till I get my answer in, Christine, as well. So that we're
one apiece. One apiece. So this is our little competition at the end of the night, Christine. One for Dave, one for Anthony. Okay. Next question.
All right. So the next one is keto-friendly ice cream or chocolate as your treat. Obviously, it's going to be keto chocolate as well.
I'm just going to say, Christine, every now and then. Oh, you're not a sweet tooth. I reckon you go keto chocolate.
Yeah, I'm going keto chocolate as well.
Yeah, that's what I would go.
Okay, I would go the ice cream, the Baskin Robbins. Okay, next question.
Okay, so maybe that was about you. That you got something to tell us, Dave.
Metabolic flexibility.
Type of holiday: a beach or mountains?
Beach.
So
I'm gonna
go beach.
Okay, I'll just break it up a bit. I go mountains.
I think Dave's got an advantage there.
She lives in the mountains. She lives in the mountains. Okay, fantastic. Okay.
No, but it's your holiday. You're not
My ideal, and there's no place around Brisbane that you can do this, but my ideal would be the mountains and the beach. Somewhere you could live in the mountains and have a view of the water. That would be my ideal.
Do you want to swim in the water? Because I guess you could go to Cairns, but you just can't swim in the water. You can see the beach and you can.
Yeah, but I wouldn't go to Cairns. I want to stay here and have that, and that's not possible.
Right. Okay.
All right. You got to come out the scenic rim. The beach is only 30 minutes away.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Okay. Next question. 3-me. I'm in the lead.
Next question.
I'm in the lead.
High rocks, or one of Dave's New Year's Days WODs that we've all had to do. What are you going to choose? High rocks or Dave's New Year's Days?
Clearly going to be my New Year's Day workout, because Christine rings me every New Year's Eve and says, "Can I come to the workout tomorrow, Dave?"
Because my gym's closed.
I'm going to go.
It's because my CrossFit's closed. I have to go to yours.
So if there was High Rocks on offer at the same day, this is the question: if High Rocks was on offer the same day,
which one would you go to?
New Year's Day.
New Year's Day, High Rocks, New Year's Day.
I'm going to go Dave's WOD. What would you go, Christine?
Yeah, Dave's one.
Dave's one. I'm already thinking about that WOD. I'm already planning it. I'm already 6 months away.
So here's your hard one. And like if Tim or
is this the last one? Is this the last one?
No, we've got a few more. So the goat of keto, is it Tim Noakes or is it Asim Malhotra?
Oh,
they're both
as in greatest of all time.
Classify.
Right?
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Oh God. I would say I'm going to go. Well, you go first. You choose.
I'm going Tim Noakes.
Okay. I'll have to go Noakes as well.
Yeah, I would say Tim Noakes.
That's kind of like that.
I hope Asim doesn't watch this now.
Asim sort of jumped on board a bit later, eh?
So,
yeah, he did. Okay. That's right.
All right. Chicken or beef?
Beef.
Going beef.
Yeah, beef.
Okay. And this one, I think this is going to be obvious because you didn't even know what it was before. But CrossFit Games or the WFP? CrossFit Games for me, I'm going to say, because you don't know the WFP. So if you say WFP now, it's a stitch up.
Yes, you'll have to look up the WFP, Christine. But World Fitness Project or the WTF, what the fuck, project. Yeah, CrossFit Games. It's just fantastic spectacle, isn't it?
Yeah, CrossFit Games.
All right, last question.
One more. Okay. Last question. I'm 1 point in the lead, by the way.
Oh, God. Okay. Star Wars or Star Trek? I'm going Star Wars.
Well, I'm going to hold my lead. I'll say Star Wars as well.
Ah, you cheeky.
It might be Star Trek.
I would have to say Star Trek.
Oh, there you go. no points. There was your
No
chance.
points.
There was your chance, Anthony.
Oh, far out. Okay.
So that's
and I even set
another
those
win.
questions up this time. That's another win. So you've got
that
two,
was,
and I've got one.
Yep. I really like the Tim Noakes question. That was great. There are some amazing health crusaders. Gary Fettke, Tim Noakes. If anyone wants to learn a little bit more, talk to people who absolutely understand this stuff and lived it and have hundreds and thousands of patients. Tim Noakes, Gary Fettke, Asim Malhotra, Christine Cronau, Low Carb Down Under. Watch all of their stuff. Anthony Chaffee's fantastic. Do you know Anthony, Christine?
Yes. Yeah.
The plant-free MD carnivore.
Sean
actually
Baker.
Sean Baker. They're saving lives. And it's just
absolutely
incredible. It's incredible. But any last words, Christine? Thank you so much for coming on board and joining us at the camp.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody, look up Christine. Like, we'll put the links on the podcast and the episodes. If you've got problems with your diet, if you're struggling with trying to lose weight, if you're struggling with energy, look up Christine. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's probably got way more knowledge than most of the doctors that you see. So, and I said that, she didn't say that. So,
thank you. That's very kind.
just look her up and change your life, guys.
All right.
Thank you so much,
see
Christine.
You in 3
night,
weeks.
everyone.
We're going to see you in 3 weeks. Good night, Christine.
Good night, Christine.
Good night.
See you later.
We're going to see everyone in 3 weeks because in 2 weeks' time there is an immovable obstruction that's going to stop us presenting. But in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have another fantastic guest on the show. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of the promos, and also so that you can send questions in to Christine. This has been an awesome evening, a long one, but I think well worth it.
Absolutely. Dropping absolute nuggets of truth and, different to what a lot of people probably have heard. So hopefully it's hit a lot of people.
Okay, let's go home. I've still got to have some steak.
More steak.
Bye-bye.
All right, man. See ya.